Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing? I know, I'm also having whiplash, so we're already at volume 3. Um, what, Henry? One of his eyes is brown, and his shadow is smiling. What? I didn't notice that either. Thank you for pointing that out. War Dove. Oh, like a tea infuser. I mean, I guess a paper towel, it's a little bit like doing the cheesecloth thing. You can think about it that way and, like, feel fancy. But, I'm thinking about the cover now. I can't believe I did not notice that. I just saw his one really, really blue eye. Oh, so I ordered the special edition of volume 7, which is the last volume of this series. And I just want to show you, like, the stickers that it came with, because they are very cute. And I tried not to look at, like, anything that was spoilery. It just comes with, like, postcards of each book cover, but they're kind of... This is bigger than a normal postcard, right? I think. But it's really cute. Oh, and there's a bookmark. And I want to talk about this. Is that Murong Lian on the bookmark on the bottom? Like, he's apparently very important if that's him here. Like, very important. I guess Meat Bun seems to really like him, even though he's, like, horrible and awful. Are the Wait a minute. Oh my god, that is the stabbing. That's the stabbing. That's what's happening right now. It's like, oh, that's cute. Wait a minute. Now I'm gonna look at the one for... Oh, okay. Book 2. Here's the book 2 chibis. A lot more wholesome. I'm not gonna look at the one for book 3 yet. So, yeah. Not the rice bin. Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit intimidated by the cover of this volume. Like, all the volumes have, like, these really beautiful covers, and then this one is just, like, red. Destruction. Like, alright. But, I don't need to keep stalling when I can actually just start reading it and find out what happens. Hello. The gang's all here. Okay, I'm gonna get started. We are on chapter 67, which is Trust Me Once More. Gumong's blue eyes looked into Moshi's as the smoke of the incense drifted past them in silence. He didn't speak. He seemed to hear Jiang Yeshue sighing right by his ear. Moshi was only 7 years old when Fu Lingjun died. He was betrayed by his second-in-command, his corpse mutilated, his spiritual core dug out. In the letter he didn't live to send, he wrote, "Who says we have no clothes, for we share the same robes of battle? You did the exact same thing his killer did, and you expect Moshi to forgive you?" The ash dispersed on the wind and incense smoke clouded the air. "Moshi, I don't think I like war either." For some reason, his heart and throat both ached as he spoke. He choked with it. Although he had no memory of the past, he felt that his words were sincere. Moshi didn't understand him. Moshi was mistaken. How could he like going to war? So many dead, bathing wretchedly in blood. A singular achievement paid for with 10,000 withered bones. How could he like that? He hadn't fought for himself, or for honor, or for an opportunity to advance. If he had, he wouldn't now see so many ghosts, wouldn't see them questioning him, blaming him. He'd been living with guilt all along. I know how you feel. I know how it felt to lose your father. I do, I swear. Moshi was silent. He didn't want to argue in front of his father's grave. It was true that he had once believed without reservation that Gumong valued human life and camaraderie above all else, but now he found Gumong's words entirely ridiculous. Gumong, who had once said, "You can't be too attached to past affections," and stabbed his former brothers in the name of revenge. How could he understand how Moshi felt? He was nothing like Gumong. There was no way he could excise. I realize I don't know how to say that. Excise past attachments and feelings from his heart, just as he still couldn't stand the sweet scent of osmanthus in full bloom. Just as he could never forget all that happened while his father had been alive, despite how young he'd been. He could close his eyes whenever he wanted and be met with scenes from the past. Mo Ching-chi, standing under the osmanthus tree, his silhouette tall and upright. Moshi couldn't even bear to handle his own weapon. Despite the passage of years, he could never forget the question he had once asked his father. "Papa, what's your weapon made of?" It was like a curse. As Moshi looked at the golden strings of characters that read Fuling Jun Mo Ching Chi, may his valiant soul rest in eternal peace, he could picture every single plant in the Mo Manor's back garden without effort. He remembered the promise his father had made to him. Moshi closed his eyes. "You can't understand me." At the age of 7, he had learned what the fires of war meant. That understanding came at the cruelest price, his father's life. The child Moshi had been was tender and immature. He hadn't understood what battle entailed. He only thought it ferocious and found the thrill and vengeance of fighting terribly attractive. He badgered his father constantly with questions about weapons. He liked how his father looked in military uniform, stately and commanding, imposing and impressive. He liked when his father rushed to the battlefield. In his heart, his papa couldn't lose. All that the fires of war bestowed on the Mo clan was supreme glory. He had been too naive. He'd had no idea what war would take from him. As for Mo Ching-chi, he'd probably thought Moshi was too young to bear such heavy talk of life and death. "Papa has 2 spiritual weapons," he had said with a smile. "One is cast with Shui Ran's soul, passed down through generations of the Mo clan. It'll be yours eventually. The other, Papa received when he first entered the academy." Moshi looked up at his father with shining eyes and tugged his sleeve. "I want to see. I want to see." Mo Ching-chi reached down and plucked off an osmanthus blossom that had fallen in Moshi's hair. Smiling, he raised his hand, palm up. "Xiao Yue, come." A beam of golden light rose in the center of his palm. Flecks of brilliance coalesced into the shape of a sperm whale that swam with leisurely strokes around the tree. It flicked its tail, and osmanthus flowers rained down across the courtyard. The little boy stood at his father's side, his dark eyes wide in wonder as he watched. Weapon transformation. At Mo Ching-chi's command, the spiritual form of the sperm whale transformed at once into a golden shield. Mo Ching-chi grasped the shield and smiled down at his son. Xiao Yue is cast from the spiritual core of a whale that had become a spirit. Once transformed into a weapon, it becomes a shield. This is Papa's second weapon. Back then, Moshi had burned with admiration and curiosity. He very carefully reached out to touch the shield. Are all cultivators' weapons made from spiritual forms? Henry. No comment. Just about. Mo Ching-chi chuckled. I think I should be saying his name Ching-chi, and I don't know why I can't get myself to do that. Bronze and iron weapons often can't handle the flow of spiritual energy, nor can they be summoned at will, so they have to be carried around with you. That's why most people don't choose weapons made from common metals. This explanation was a little over Moshi's head. Blinking in confusion, he looked at the shield again. Papa, will I have one too? You're the only son of the Mo clan. You'll enter the Cultivation Academy soon, so of course you'll get one too. Moshi's spirits instantly soared. He was filled with the naive fearlessness of youth. He yet felt no reverence for arms or mortality. He only thought that having a weapon was something amazing. In the future, he wanted to be just like his papa, fighting on the frontiers astride a splendid war horse. Having never experienced eternal separation, he ignorantly and impetuously believed that he would adore such a blood-soaked career. To let loose an arrow that pierced the storm, to surrender his life on the fields of slaughter. What a heroic daydream that had been. Moshi couldn't help but touch his father's shield, his eyes sparkling. Then what will mine be? Will I have a big fish just like Papa? Mo Ching-chi bent until he and his son were nearly eye to eye. He smiled as he patted Moshi's soft black hair. The elders at the academy will set you a trial. During it, you'll summon the holy weapon that fits your soul best. You might get a big fish just like Papa. Or it could be something else. It could be anything, from magical flora to spiritual fauna. I'll get it as soon as I enter the academy? Pretty much. Mo Ching-chi smiled. Then let's go to the Cultivation Academy. Moshi tugged on his father's sleeve, eyes huge. Can we go tomorrow? Not tomorrow. Mo Ching-chi laughed and explained patiently. You'll have to wait till you're 7 at least. The academy doesn't take students any younger. Once you turn 7, Papa will ask His Imperial Majesty to admit you into the academy, and then you can undergo the trial. Then our fireball will be a real little cultivator. Moshi, all unknowing, had grinned. Then something seemed to occur to him. He asked hesitantly, Papa? Is the trial hard? What if I can't pass and they send me home? After all, it was only natural for such a small child to be nervous. Don't worry, Mo Ching-chi smiled. Even a fool would be able to pass the trial. You'd have no trouble even if you took it with your eyes closed. You have nothing to fear at all. He smacked his own forehead. Right, a Shi Xiong or Shi Jie will accompany you. If you encounter any challenges, they'll help. Hearing that, Moshi relaxed. He'd absorbed his father's words raptly, as though he wanted to grow up as fast as possible and receive his own weapon. Papa had promised to take him there once he was 7, so from that day on, Moshi counted the days until his 7th birthday in eager anticipation. He diligently marked off each passing day in a Chonghua calendar before he went to sleep at night. With every stroke of the brush, It seemed he was nearing his dream of becoming a powerful war god. He liked battle, and he couldn't wait to get his weapon, to dedicate himself to learning cultivation, to grow up and fight shoulder to shoulder with his father. How thrilling that would be. Then the Liao kingdom attacked. Mo Qingchi was appointed to his usual post of commander and rushed off to the battlefield. That year, Mo Shi finally had his longed-for 7th birthday. But what he received was neither weapon nor admittance to the academy. You're on his 7th birthday? Great. Instead, it was a military report from a very long way away. Before he could begin to wrap his young mind around the idea of mortality, Mo Manor was draped in white silk, and mourning bells tolled from the imperial palace. Fuling June has passed. Cries of grief rang across the city, and paper money covered the ground like unmelting snow. People came in droves to Mo Manor to shed their tears and pay their respects. Regardless of whether Moshi knew them or not, regardless of whether they were familiar faces or practically strangers, each one wailed as they knelt on the ground. His mother sobbed herself into a stupor more than once, and his perfidious uncle feigned heartbreak as he arranged his foster brother's funeral. All were in mourning garb. Even the emperor himself came in white. To lose Fuling is to lose a part of me. Forehead pressed to the coffin, the late emperor wept, his voice cracking. Heavens, why must you be so cruel? The court officials were on their knees. Their sobs filled the air. Outside the main hall was piled a mountain of sacrificial treasures. The high priest blew into the horn of a spirit yak, and a beam of golden light rose from the casket, motes of brilliant warmth melding into a whale that swam circles in the hall, before gliding out into the courtyard. The osmanthus tree there had long shed its flowers. There would be no rain of petals as that great creature swam by for the last time. It soared into the lofty skies and returned to its sea of drifting clouds. The holy weapon has been released, the high priest cried, kowtowing as he knelt. May his spirit rest in peace. The crowd wept as they pressed their foreheads to the ground. Fuling Jun was a hero. May his valiant soul return home. Among this crowd of otherworldly apparitions clad in white, Moshi was the only one who didn't cry. He silently knelt, watching in dazed confusion. Who had left? Who had passed? Who was the hero? Who had become a valiant soul? What did hero mean exactly? Growing up, he had often heard that word, but with his father's death, it was suddenly horribly foreign. This word, which had once seemed so dazzling, the battlefield he had endlessly yearned for, what were they, really? May his valiant soul return home. May his spirit rest in peace. No, no. Moshi's body shook. He didn't want any valiant deeds. He didn't want his father to be a hallowed hero. He just wanted his papa to be standing in the courtyard, to take him to pick osmanthus blossoms in the autumn, and brew a pot of sweet flower wine. He just wanted his papa to return, to come back and take his hand, to lean down and say cheerfully, "Little fireball, you're 7 years old, so papa will take you to the academy. Be good and learn diligently from the elders." At that thought, he almost seemed to see his papa standing in the doorway, turning his head to smile at him. "Little fireball," he said, "good boy, come here. Let papa take a look at you." Dazzled, Moshi walked toward the silhouette in that beam of sunlight. It was just then that the funeral firecrackers went off. Their crackling seemed to wake him from some dream deep in his soul. "Dad?" he asked blankly. "Dad, where are you?" Where are you?" There was no one at the door, only a bolt of white silk hanging low. His fingertips were ice cold. In that cruel moment, he finally, dimly, understood the meaning of death. Ouch. Meat bun indeed. With a great wail, he shouted for his papa, pelting out of the hall. The crowd of court officials were shocked and grieved by the sight as they wiped their endless tears. His uncle rushed after him and scooped him up as he struggled. "Shi'ar, be good," he said, eyes red. "Come to uncle. Come to uncle." "I saw Papa. I saw him," Moshi cried, his voice cracking as he threw himself into his uncle's arms and bawled. "I saw him. Why did he leave? Why did he leave? Why doesn't he want me anymore?" The child shouted himself hoarse. Each cry was more mournful than the last, his entire face blotchy with tears. In the end, his trembling lips formed one last question. Why doesn't he want me anymore? That was the year he turned 7, the year he had yearned for with his papa. When it came, it wasn't what he had expected at all. So this was war. This was the price of glory. Months later, his birthday arrived. He was still dressed in mourning clothes, sewn with the most exquisite thread and finest workmanship. The Mo clan's stature had only risen after his father's death, but what did that matter? Okay, months later, Okay, wait, it didn't happen on his birthday. It was just that he never got to reach 7 years old with his dad. Which, I don't know that that's any better, but at least it wasn't on his birthday. He walked to the window, where the osmanthus tree outside was once again in bloom. Golden stars were scattered between slim leaves of jade, each like a tiny reflection of the past year. Awash in their fragrant scent, he sat down with the Chonghua calendar he'd marked for 2 years. A thick layer of dust had accumulated on it. His own voice from years past seemed to echo in his ears. "How many days are left until my 7th birthday?" Back then, Mo Qingchi had patted Moshi's head with a large palm. "There's no rush." "But I'm in a big rush, Papa," Moshi grumbled. "I really want to skip these 2 years and wake up when I'm 7. Mo Qingchi burst into laughter, the sound at first vivid, then muffled, then gradually subsumed in the soft rustle of the leaves outside. Back then, Moshi hadn't known what the future would hold. He only felt that those 2 years would be very long and boring. He wanted to get through them as quickly as possible so he could turn 7 and take one step closer to the battlefield he yearned for. He had no way of knowing that those 2 years he rushed through were the last with his papa. And afterward, no matter how deep his regret, no matter how thoughtful or sensible he became, he couldn't go back. He could never relive those last 700 days, the days he had resented and wished to discard. He hugged that big calendar, its reckoning forever paused at the 16th lunar New Year's Eve of the era, the day they'd received the battle report. "Papa," he whispered, "today is the day. I can go to the academy now." He waited a while, but there was no response. There never would be. Moshi buried his head in his arms, curling up on the table. Shoulders shaking, he sobbed himself breathless. "Papa, what if we stopped going to war? Don't go. Come back. Come back." Hero is such a cruel word. I just want you to stand in the great hall and watch the osmanthus flowers bloom in autumn with me. Come back. When I grow up, I'll take your place on the battlefield, okay? I won't do it for rank or fame. I don't like battle anymore. I just want to protect you. I just want to be at your side. I wish you'd come home, Papa. Okay. Okay, Meat Bun. You'll never understand me. On the cloud-draped peak of Warrior Soul Mountain, Moshi had risen to his feet. Now, he slowly opened his eyes. His gaze paused on Fuling Jun's jade gravestone before shifting to Gumong. If you weren't reveling in battle for the sake of your own ambition, then I don't understand why you would defect to the Liao Kingdom. Gumong was silent. It's true that Changhua wronged you. We owed a debt to you. But there was more than one path before you, and more than one country you could have fled to. Yet you went to the Liao Kingdom. Moshi's eyes were clear and cold. You wanted revenge. For your dashed prospects, for your dead comrades in arms, for your own advancement. You didn't care whose blood you spilled. Moshi. Sorry. I'm the useless one here, Moshi said, self-mocking. Not even the price of my life was enough for you to turn back. Gumong watched Moshi's eyes. They were too dark, too cold, too deep. In the sunlight at the summit of Warrior Soul Mountain, the near decade of disappointment they carried was so clearly visible. His heart was suddenly seized by an overpowering impulse. He didn't know what kind of emotion it was. All he knew was he didn't want to see Moshi like that. He didn't want Moshi to look at him like that. Heart pounding, the words slipped from his mouth. Can you trust me again? They were like an assassin's arrow. These words caught both of them off guard. Moshi's eyes widened. Astonishment was clear on that handsome face, paired with an extremely rare blankness. He seemed almost dazed. What? Gumong bit his lip and stood, looking at Moshi with his back to the sky. I don't know how bad I used to be. I've forgotten everything from before. But right now, I agree with you. I don't like to fight either, and I don't like to be betrayed either. The brisk spring breeze ruffled his white robes. As a dense cloud withdrew from the path of the sun, 1,000 beams of gold cascaded around Gumong like a shower of arrows, as though flying down to kill a man from years ago, or as if to pierce someone's heart. The former beast of the altar stood before Moshi. Backlit as he was, Moshi couldn't make out Gumong's features, but the voice he heard was no less determined than before he lost his memories. I want to atone. I don't want to disappoint you, Gumong said, his voice overflowing with a deep, soul-stirring conviction. Can you trust me once more? Without waiting for Moshi's response, Gumong got down on one knee, white sleeves fluttering. For the first time, he lowered his head in true deference and shame. Harboring hope and earnest warmth, burdened by bloody crimes and freezing with cold, he softly said, I beg my lord to teach me. Moshi was struck speechless. At that very moment, there came the sound of clapping, a voice diaphanous and chilly as smoke drifted over. Good heavens, how moving! What a lovely performance! Pray tell, what tale of redemption is this? Tsk, I might just drown in my own tears. Well, I wonder who that is. Yeah. That's the end of the chapter. I'm still like, is it really Murong Lian on the bookmark? Like, why is he there? Is he gonna have a redemption arc? I don't know. Okay. We're on chapter 68, which is called My Heart is Clear. The two of them turned to see Muranglian saunter out of the shadows, white clothes aflutter and pipe in hand. In addition to the gravestones at the mountain's summit, there were also 8 jade statues, each as tall as 10 men, carved in the likeness of the 7 sovereigns and one extraordinary guoshu since Chonghua's founding. Muranglian had been skulking behind one of these sculptures without attracting the notice of either Moshi or Gumang. Moshi glared at Muranglian. "Wang Shujun, do you really have nothing better to do?" he asked flatly. "This lord came to pay respects to my late father. Afterward, I found myself wanting to gaze upon this majestic scenery while I contemplated the ephemeral nature of life. Thus, I paused here to admire the mountains, the rivers, and the drifting clouds." Muranglian narrowed his eyes and took a drag on his pipe. He slowly exhaled. "Does Shihajun think I would listen to such a ridiculous conversation otherwise?" "I want to atone," he snickered. "I'm going to laugh myself sick." He stepped onto the jade plank path, one spotless white silk shoe after another, and strode over to Moshi and Gumang. His gaze was full of undisguised malice as he looked Gumang up and down. "Sweetheart, don't you know what kind of trash you were?" Gumang's serenity was infuriating. "I know," he said. "I am a traitor." Muranglian blew a ring of smoke and scoffed, sneer unchanging. "Oh, so you do know. I thought after living it up at Shiha Manor for so long, you might have forgotten your place and your status." With a single long stride, Moshi stepped between Muranglian and Gumang, his face impassive as ever. "Muranglian, know your bounds." Muranglian let out a rather sinister laugh. "What, I can't even scold the dog I raised anymore?" "He belongs to me now." Moshi made no effort to soften his tone. Muranglian's facade of indifference, thin as a cicada's wing, sloughed away in an instant. "You don't have to say it. I can tell you think he belongs here. Only the people of Chonghua may bow at the graves of our heroes buried on Warrior Soul Mountain." Muranglian swooped in close to Moshi, eyes glinting and teeth gritted. "So, Shihajun, tell me the truth. You still see him as your brother, don't you? If we are to fraternize with our enemies so, why don't we roll out a red carpet and invite the King of Liao to tour the tombs of our fallen heroes while we toss flowers and light firecrackers?" Moshi had ignored Muranglian's jibes, but Gumang spoke up. "I came to apologize." Muranglian looked as if he'd heard a brilliant joke. "Apologize?" Gumang thought he hadn't explained himself clearly enough. "I came to apologize to them." He turned to look at the lofty gravestones. "To apologize for my crimes." This time, Muranglian really did burst out laughing. The tassels on his pipe swayed with his cackling, each guffaw louder than the one before. "Ha ha ha! Apologize for your crimes? Your crimes?" He stared at Gumang with the sly eyes of a fox. His laughter hadn't yet faded, but viciousness had already risen in his gaze. The overlapping mirth and malice made his pale face seem extraordinarily malevolent. "How will you apologize? How can you apologize? Don't make yourself ridiculous, Gumang. Do you think stumbling to your knees at the grave of Moshi's father, bowing once or twice, and burning some paper counts as apologizing? Chonghua's heroes can't bear such an insult." "Muranglian," Moshi snapped. "What, are others not allowed to speak to him? I can't even berate him a little?" Muranglian spun around to glare at Moshi. "Little fireball, we both lost our fathers young. How deficient Wangshu Manor must be in your eyes, that you dare order me around like this. Your old man and mine are both lying on this mountain. Maybe you don't mind that he's here, but I do. As is my right. Murong Lian jabbed a vicious finger in Gumong's direction. Look at him. How can he speak of apology with that carefree expression? Without warning, Gumong walked right up to Murong Lian, stepping around Mo Shi. I didn't say that was my apology. I'm not smart, but I know that's far from enough. Bullshit, Murong Lian snapped. You're not dumb. No, you're far too clever. You pretended to be obedient and resigned at Luomei Pavilion, but now that you're in our General Mo's hands, you start faking remorse and come here to burn a few sheets of paper money for sympathy. Gumong, are the spirits of Chonghua's valiant martyrs so cheap? Do you think a couple sheets of paper money can write off your sins? Do you think all the descendants of Chonghua's heroes are as easily appeased as your Shiha Jun? Gumong looked at him, gaze unfaltering. I don't. Ooh, okay, there's art. Then you never should have come, you bastard. Murong Lian suddenly hooked his pipe around the back of Gumong's neck. Gumong shuddered at the scalding metal pressed into his skin, but he didn't struggle free, as though he'd steeled himself against it. His pristine blue eyes fixed wordlessly on Murong Lian's face. Ash fell into his loose lapels, the sparks leaving burns on his exposed skin. Gumong didn't flinch, but Mo Shi couldn't stand to watch any longer. Whether it was because of Gumong or the solemnity of the heroes' tombs, he had no desire to see Murong Lian carry on with this farce. He grabbed Murong Lian's arm and lifted the pipe away from Gumong's neck. The skin beneath was blistered and raw, but Murong Lian was yet unsatisfied. Mo Shi, let fucking go of me, he snarled. Murong Lian, you plan to throw a fit on Warrior Soul Mountain? You're the one who brought a traitor here to offend generations of Chonghua's martyrs. And you have the nerve to tell me off? He came to apologize. Only to your dad. Did he apologize to any other? Did he kneel before any other? What kind of apology is this? He's just sucking up to you so you'll let him off easy. I can see he's already gotten what he wants. And what do you plan next? Will you ask His Imperial Majesty to reward him for his newfound contrition? Have you any idea what he's plotting? It was no rare thing for such fury to lead to physical violence. Murong Lian was certainly trying to get a rise out of Mo Shi. Yet to avoid coming to blows atop Warrior Soul Mountain, Mo Shi silently endured his taunts. When Gumong saw Murong Lian goad Mo Shi, he stepped forward to try to get between them. Unexpectedly, Murong Lian whipped around and slapped Gumong across the face with an audible crack. Okay, here's art. We're grabbing. Yeah. The boys are fighting. The red lotus sigil on Gumong's neck glowed to life, but he suppressed the spell. He had heard the conversation between Mo Shi and Murong Lian. He understood that it would be wrong to brandish weapons or shed blood here. Murong Lian wasn't satisfied with one slap. The sight of Gumong's face filled him with indescribable frustration and disgust. He delivered a vicious kick to Gumong's chest. Caught unawares, Gumong crumpled onto the steps and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Gumong, Mo Shi cried out sharply. Gumong brusquely swiped at the blood on his mouth and looked up at Murong Lian. A bestial savagery gathered in his eyes, but he determinedly restrained himself. Heaving to catch his breath, he lowered his eyes and pushed away Mo Shi's outstretched hand. He used his sleeve to wipe the blood from the steps. Murong Lian narrowed his eyes, his fingertips trembling from anger. What are you doing now? This place shouldn't get dirty. Gumong lifted his head. I said I wanted to apologize for my crimes. It's the truth. I said I wouldn't betray anyone ever again, and that's the truth as well. Murong Lian said nothing. I didn't lie. Gumong's blood-stained lips parted. Everything I said as I knelt here today was true. Those limpid blue eyes were so clean and so clear that Muronglian couldn't help taking a step back. Under his sleeve, he fiddled with the sapphire-colored ring on his thumb as his shuddering became more and more uncontrollable. As if determined to ignore some emotion that threatened to overcome him, Muronglian paused for a moment and suddenly gritted his teeth. Fine, you want to apologize for your crimes to Koto, to start anew. Is that right? Yes, Gumong replied firmly. Muronglian looked up and took a deep breath. When he gazed back at Gumong, his eyes shone with an indefinable light. Hidden within his sleeve, his fingers tightened around his thumb until that sapphire-blue ring dug into the flesh of his palm. Kneel before every single gravestone in the cemetery, regardless of when they were erected or whether they died because of you. With each koto, say the traitor Gumong deserves to die 10,000 deaths. Muronglian bent his smoke-scented lips to Gumong's ear. He said softly, "Only after you've knelt at every single grave on the mountain will you have the barest of rights to claim sincerity in apologizing to the departed souls." Muronglian straightened and glanced at Moshi. Then, as if he never expected Moshi to agree, he turned back to Gumong. "But you belong to Shihajun now, so I can't give you orders. It all depends on how regretful you really are." Gumong didn't hesitate for a moment. He got to his feet, the brilliant sunlight illuminating the reddened skin of his cheek and the blood staining the corner of his mouth. "I'll do it. I said I meant it. Once I've decided on something, I'll never turn back." It was hard to gauge whether malice or shock was more prominent on Muronglian's face at Gumong's swift reply. Or perhaps it was some secret feeling, unfathomable to anyone but himself, that lurked within his expression. Like, excuse me, what are we talking about? Because this is the second time that we've gotten something about an unfathomable expression. Muronglian's eyes flashed as he whispered, "You'd better not have second thoughts. There are tens of thousands of graves here. 3 full days and nights may not be enough to kneel to them all. Whether it's 4 days and 4 nights, or 10 days and 10 nights, I'll do it," Gumong replied. He turned to glance at Moshi. "I want to show you my heart." Moshi's hands had long since clenched into fists, but he held his tongue. He knew Gumong too well, and knew that look in his eyes. Blocking his way would be like barring a wild beast from blood. There was no way Gumong would obey. Furthermore, Muronglian wasn't wrong. Even minor mistakes had their consequences. And the sins Gumong carried amounted to battlefields strewn with corpses and endless trails of blood. Still, Moshi murmured hoarsely, "Gumong, think it through carefully. Even if you do this, no one will forgive you. It doesn't matter if you kneel for 3 days and 3 nights, or 10 days and 10 nights. Even if you die kotoing on this mountain, you will be a criminal in Chonghua. Nothing will change." "I want to show you my heart," Gumong repeated. Moshi felt as though a boulder had rammed into his chest. Hearing Gumong say these words a second time, he suddenly understood. Gumong had never imagined his crimes and betrayals would be written off. He had known long since that nothing of those could be erased. He just wanted to live differently. He just felt that the way he was had been wrong. He just wanted. "After you see it, if you're willing to trust me, will you teach me what to do? This time, I don't want to walk the wrong path." Moshi couldn't say a word. His heart ached so fiercely he nearly crumpled to his knees. Braced against the cold mountain wind, His face was deathly pale, his blood like ice. He looked at Gumong's upturned face, so naive and ignorant. After a long pause, he heard someone speak in a voice so rough that he only realized belatedly that it was his own. "Don't be foolish, Gumong," he sighed. "There's no path forward for you." Gumong's eyes widened. Muranglian went pale. "Moshi, don't tell..." But Moshi didn't listen. He felt as if his heart was being cut open and his throat was raw and bloody, but still he spoke, enunciating each word with such cold cruelty. "No path remains for you. His Imperial Majesty gave you the death sentence. The sole reason you're still breathing now is to keep you available for use in black magic experiments." "Moshi," Muranglian shouted furiously. "Why are you telling him this? Are you crazy? What do you want? For him to atone with his whole heart, just so you can tell him on his dying day that all he did was useless?" Muranglian fell silent. Moshi turned back toward Gumong. "Since you want to do it, then I'll tell you the truth. It could be tomorrow or next year, but in the end, you will die. No matter what you do, you'll never earn a chance to start anew." Gumong said nothing. His wide-eyed gaze slowly drifted downward, and his long lashes lowered, casting a tracery of delicate shadow over his ocean-blue eyes. Just as Muranglian and Moshi both thought he would drop the matter, he said, "I understand." The wind whistled past like the wailing of war drums, like the weeping of the dead. "But it doesn't matter," Gumong continued. "Even if I could start over for just one day, if I could live properly for just one day, I still think that would be the right thing to do." When he looked up, he resembled once more the passionate youth from the past, who charged headlong even into the face of death. "I'll go as far as I can," said Gumong. "If I die tomorrow, then I'll have been a good person for a day. If I die next year, then I'll have been a good person for a year. This is the last thing I can do. This is the last redemption I can ask for after years of wandering lost." Okay, that was the end of that chapter. Yeah, I didn't think Gumong was gonna, find out about that so quickly. So, that's on the table now. We're at chapter 69, which is called Start Anew. I think I'm gonna read this chapter, and then we'll take, a 5-10 minute break afterwards. A drop of dew rolled off of a cypress leaf. The wind fluttered through Moshi's wide sleeves as he stood beneath a copse of trees on Warrior Soul Mountain. He gazed at the small silhouette moving among the vast forest of gravestones in the distance. It was the night of the first day. Stars blanketed the sky. After the earlier confrontation with Muranglian, Gumong had indeed started to koto at each tomb and gravestone. Muranglian unmistakably meant to humiliate him, but Gumong had taken it as an opportunity. Spurred by a profound stubbornness, he sought to prove his newfound resolve. "You're really going to do this?" "I am. Even if nothing will change?" "Something will change," Gumong said. "At the very least, I'll feel better." In the end, Muranglian knew that he'd gotten his way, while Moshi knew that Gumong had made his choice and wouldn't turn back. Eventually, Muranglian left, and Moshi had no choice but to leave as well. Gumong kotoed alone amid the birdsong of the cemetery. In time, the weary birds returned to their forests. The setting sun sank below the horizon, and the silver sickle of the moon glinted like frost. Not a sound could be heard in the silent night but for Gumong's movements through the city of the dead, kneeling and bowing again and again. As time passed, Moshi couldn't dispel his uneasiness and made his way back to the peak of Warrior Soul Mountain alone. Revealing his presence would only create trouble, so he stood among the trees, watching the distant white-robed figure. Gumong knelt the entire night, and Moshi watched until daybreak. When other mourners arrived after dawn to pay their respects, Moshi left silently. He was expected at morning court and couldn't stay staring at gravestones all day. Perhaps Murong Lian had fanned the flames of rumor. This matter of Gumong kowtowing at Warrior Soul Mountain seemed to have grown wings. By noon, the tale had spread throughout Chonghua's capital. "What's that guy planning now? I heard he had a sudden epiphany and realized he'd done wrong, so now he wants to apologize." "Really? It had better not be a trick. Why don't we go take a look?" Chonghua's high-ranking nobles didn't have so much free time on their hands that they could go pick a fight on Warrior Soul Mountain, but common idlers swarmed toward the heroes' graves like mosquitoes scenting blood. They claimed they wanted to pay their respects, but in reality, they wanted to personally get an eyeful of this exciting new development. Afraid of offending Shihajun, these busybodies didn't make trouble for Gumong directly. But this didn't diminish their cutting mockery in the least. As Gumong knelt at each grave, the onlookers chattered to one another behind raised sleeves. "He's actually kneeling all proper. Back when he was taking clients at Wang Shujun's Luomei Pavilion, he wasn't anywhere close to this docile. Shihajun's only trained him for about half a year, so how has he gotten this obedient? Shihajun must be good at it, duh. If you ask me, everyone knows Shihajun may be coaxed, but not coerced. That Gu asshole must have figured out Shihajun's personality, so he decided to put on this act and deceive everyone. Aha! That actually makes a lot of sense. If he really felt so guilty, why not just off himself? There's no question, he's a liar." Gumong turned a deaf ear to it all. As these snatches of criticism buzzed around him, he slowly walked up the steps, kowtowing and kneeling as he went. Over and over, he repeated the words Murong Lian taught him. "The traitor Gumong deserves to die 10,000 deaths." He chanted devoutly, as though this was a rebirth mantra that could deliver his guilty soul from the abyss of worldly suffering. But too many people hated and disdained him. He thrashed in that sea of misery, while those on the shore cast stones at him. "Go away, go drown," they jeered. "This is the only kind of ending your life deserves." Against this onslaught, Gumong repeated the endless motions of kowtowing, striking his forehead thousands upon thousands of times against the cold, hard stone. His footsteps were leaden, his shoulders stooped, but his eyes shone with a light that pushed him onward. He bent his spine, he lowered his head. From the brightness of day, through the vast darkness of night, he piously put his hands together. "The traitor Gumong deserves to die 10,000 deaths." Blue. I'd say nice, but I know you're talking about the chapter number. I was like, I'm not going to say anything because it's not the time and the place. On the third day, a dense thicket of clouds covered the sky, blanketing Chonghua City in an interminable drizzle. Gumong's robes were thin, and after kneeling for so long in the frigid wind and rain of early spring, his body was on the verge of collapse. He forced himself to crawl up another stone step on his hands and knees and knelt at the first jade gravestone. His lips moved, but he couldn't make a sound. Rain streamed sluggishly down his face. He looked up at that towering and stately hero's gravestone. Wang Shujun the Seventh, Murong Xuan. May his valiant soul rest in eternal peace. So he had made his way up to Muronglian's father. Gumong looked at the imposing golden characters on the tablet. The inscription was pristine and solemn. Before it, he was like a mound of mud, cowering before a god. His lips trembled, and his nearly useless throat strove as he mumbled. The traitor, Gumong. A crash of spring thunder boomed in the distance. The sound was dull, as if the sky had become a massive drum. Gumong trembled as he raised his numb palms. He brought them together before his forehead, and then closed his eyes to bend down, pressing his head to the ground. Deserves to die 10,000 deaths. Rumbling thunder split the skies. As if the sound had shattered his soul himself, Gumong didn't rise after this last koto. 3 days and 3 nights of kneeling, without sleep or cease, had finally rendered him unconscious. The sight of him crumpled in the rain, curled at the foot of Murong Xuan's grave, was like the rank smell of carrion to those sightseeing vultures. They scurried closer for a better look, glancing sidelong at his weak, rain-soaked body. Many were aware of Gumong's mad rampage from months earlier, and they hadn't dared raise their voices above a whisper when Gumong was conscious. But now that he had fainted from sheer exhaustion, these people gained courage. This damned slave said he wanted to apologize for his crimes, yet he collapsed before he even knelt to all of them. Is he really passed out, or is he faking it? Kick him and find out. At that, someone walked over and kicked Gumong's pale face. When he didn't react, they shouted, "He's really knocked out." Noisy chatter spilled forth as if unleashed from a dam. He's here on Warrior Soul Mountain to Koto, not to take a nap. Beat him. Curiously, most of those gathered weren't sons or heroes or descendants of martyrs. The high-born nobles who had genuine blood debts with Gumong had better things to do than spend a day hauling themselves up a mountainside to gawk at him. They wanted only to see Gumong executed. If that wasn't possible, they would rather not see him at all, and spare themselves the displeasure. And those who possessed true ability and power, such as Princess Mengzi, Jiang Fuli, Yue Juntian, or Murong Chuyi, well, nobles or powerful subjects at that level were even less likely to get mixed up in this mess. As the saying went, birds of a feather flocked together. Those who hiked all the way to see Gumong humiliated were alike in their craven shamelessness, and most were incompetent idlers. None of their dead could be laid at Gumong's feet, yet this group was far more outraged than the actual descendants of those deceased heroes in their passionate fight for justice. In this world, people who fought for justice could largely be split into 2 types: those who acted out of righteousness and spoke up to redress wrongs, and those who acted out of boredom and stirred up naught but trouble. The group at Warrior Soul Mountain was no doubt the latter. But these idlers who had come to pick fights were not the only ones on the mountain. There were also those who came honestly to pay their respects to the deceased and had run into this scene by chance. In the midst of the chaos, a child's soft voice was raised, teary with sobs she could no longer suppress. "Aunties and uncles, can you stop hitting him?" A large hand covered her mouth before she could finish her plea. The crowd turned, slightly panicked at the thought that this girl was some noble maiden who'd called out to stop them. But once they saw the speaker clearly, their panic disappeared faster than ripples in water and transformed into raw malice. "Chang Fengjun, what kind of fit is your daughter having now?" It seemed that the child who had just spoken up was little Lan Ar. She had come with her father to pay her respects at the cemetery. They hadn't expected to run into this kind of situation. Ever since she had fallen sick, Lan Ar had been scorned wherever she went. No one dared play with her, nor did they pay any heed to what she said. Other than her papa, no one so much as smiled at her. She and Gumong had merely exchanged a few words when they met at the medicine master's manor. But those words and the slight weight of the dragonfly on her head amounted to the first gentleness she had known in many, many years. Now, as she saw Dagaga bullied like this, she couldn't stop the tears that streamed down her face. My apologies, Chong Feng-jun blurted. But the rabble wouldn't let it go. They're right to call your daughter a mad dog, someone mocked. She's even pleading on behalf of a creature like him. Control your daughter's filthy mouth. The only reason she still attends the academy is out of pity. If you don't watch yourself, sooner or later, her blighted core will be torn out. Someone else took it a step further. Chong Feng-jun, surely your daughter's too young to be chasing after men. What's wrong? Did she take a fancy to this dog? Such filthy talk would have infuriated any normal father, but Chong Feng-jun could no longer be described as normal. He was a deer cornered at the edge of a cliff. Faced with those bloodthirsty predators, what could he do? It didn't matter if his anguish tore his heart to shreds and set his hands to shaking. He forced it all down. Even if the tendons in his neck protruded with rage, he had no choice but to laugh along and agree. They were right. Little Lan-ar couldn't afford any more missteps. Every day that went by, she risked expulsion and having her core pulled out. Chong Feng-jun bowed and apologized as he hurriedly scooped up his daughter and carried her away from this dangerous place. The moment he let go of Lan-ar's mouth outside the graveyard, the child burst into tears. "Papa," she sobbed into his shoulder, "what did that Dagaga do wrong?" Chong Feng-jun stroked her hair. He committed a crime punishable by death, the crime of treason. Lan-ar, you need to watch what you say. There's no way to forgive him? His crime is unpardonable. There's no chance he'll be forgiven. Lan-ar's tears rolled like beads coming off of a string. But... Her father carried her down the mountain path. She watched with her head on her father's shoulder as Gumong and that crowd of people faded into the distance. Young and naive as she was, she didn't know that Gumong had long ago lost his own parents. But the way he's being treated, her voice hitched with sobs. If his parents saw, wouldn't they be sad? If his mama and papa could see, wouldn't they be sad? Little Lan-ar didn't know that Gumong had no mother or father. He had lost his family long ago, then later his brothers, his army, his glory, and his reputation. He had nothing left but his own filth. There was no one left who would feel sorrow on his behalf. Only those who would rejoice at his suffering. No one cared for Gumong. The only one who would stay by his side was shackled by destiny and status, a man who had long since lost the freedom to do as he wished. Ugh. Henry, we never see her be crazy, which could mean nothing. But this is meat, don't assume based on rumors, bun. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that she has had some kind of, like, outburst, but I think she's, like, being successfully treated now. But no one will, everyone's, like, ignoring that, and they're not going to give her a chance. Yeah, perhaps the remnants of filth. I needed a moment. Shiha-jun. In the hall of the Bureau of Military Affairs, Moshi had just finished his work and was preparing to once again leave the capital for Warrior Soul Mountain. For each of the past few days, when Gumong had been in the cemetery, Moshi had dealt with his military duties as quickly as possible before heading back to that copse of trees to keep an eye on Gumong from afar. But today, the attending official stopped him. "What is it?" "There's been an urgent missive from the eastern frontier." His Imperial Majesty requests your presence in the throne room to discuss it this evening. Moshi paused halfway through pulling open the collar of his military uniform. The clever attending official noticed immediately. Does Shihajun have other important matters to attend to? What's the situation at the eastern frontier? Yun country fell to the Liao kingdom's demonic magic and has amassed a great numbers of ghost troops. 3 villages at the eastern frontier were massacred. Moshi refastened his collar with slender fingers. Tell His Imperial Majesty I will be at the throne room as soon as I sort through our records on ghost soldiers. We'll await Shihajun's arrival. Thus, the one in the throne room stayed awake all night, engaged in candlelit discussion, while the one on Warrior Soul Mountain lay unconscious all night, with no one to care. On the dawn of the 4th day, Gumong awoke from his stupor. He blearily blinked his eyes open. The sky had cleared, and he was sprawled in a puddle. The azure expanse above him seemed so close he could reach out and touch it. He stirred, and sensed that new wounds had somehow appeared on his body, but he wasn't much alarmed. He rubbed at a lump on his head. Did he fall? Or was this from his kotoing? He couldn't figure it out, so he let it go. A dozen or so gravestones remained. He crawled upright and scooped a handful of the water pooled in front of Murong Xuan's grave. Unbothered by its cleanliness or lack thereof, he drank it slowly, then clambered forward on all fours to continue his penance. Like the sky clearing after the rain, like the sun shining through the clouds, he felt that the weight of his crimes might finally be lessened, ever so slightly. He bowed without pause, kneeling before all of those vengeful ghosts in his dreams, kowtowing to the past and present. Level by level, one jade step at a time. Gravestone by gravestone, one deceased soul after another. Moshi arrived an hour later. He had worked through the night at the Bureau of Military Affairs, and his eyes were red after 2 nights without sleep. Another might have hurried home to their bed after spending all night at work, but Moshi seemed possessed by some waking nightmare as he took breakfast at the Bureau of Military Affairs and walked up Warrior Soul Mountain alone. Gumong had already spent 4 days on his knees. 4 days and 4 nights without rest might have been nothing to the general Gu of the past. He had a singularly strong spiritual core, which was more than enough to keep him burning hot and bright like a torch. But all that remained for the Gumong of the present was a damaged body and a shattered soul. Still, he forced himself to endure the hardship. Moshi silently watched over Gumong from afar. He counted each grave for Gumong as he knelt. Here was the 9,161st plaque, the 9,162nd plaque. He was almost there. He was almost done. By noon, Gumong finally reached the gravestone of Moshi's father once again. He looked like a beggar who had rolled in mud, soaked in dirty water from head to toe. His face was begrimed, his forehead rubbed raw, and his knees had long become a bloody mess, but his eyes were extraordinarily bright. No one who looked into those eyes could doubt his sincerity or shatter his hope. Carefully, attentively, Gumong kowtowed thrice. It was over. He let out a breath and tried to stagger to his feet. Exhausted by his long trial, he collapsed almost instantly, crumpling back toward the ground, but the pain of impact never came. He felt a cool breeze. Someone was holding him. Someone had taken his filthy body into their arms. They had a faint scent about them, one that Gumong recognized, honey and jasmine. And though they tried valiantly to hide it, their hands were shaking. Gumong turned and caught sight of Moshi's face. Moshi had stood in the shadows all this time, enduring the torment of waiting with Gumong until he had finished his apology. He'd been waiting for so long to help him up at the very end. Gumong looked at Moshi, and then looked at the hand bracing his arm. Slowly, a smile that was nearly light-hearted spread across his dirty face. But as his eyes crinkled, hot tears sprang forth. Embarrassed, he wiped wildly at his face. He wanted to speak, but after repeating, "The traitor Gumong deserves to die 10,000 deaths," so many times, it was all he could do to swallow. He couldn't say anything else. He looked at Moshi, smiling and crying at the same time. He felt so stupid. His broken brain was uselessly stuck, but he still urgently wanted to express himself. He tapped his own chest. "Do you understand my heart now? I didn't lie to you." Every word came out clumsy. He tried his hardest to smile, but he couldn't stop the tears that fell freely. "I didn't lie." Moshi said nothing. "It was true," he said haltingly. "This time, all of it is true." Caught between the desires of his heart and the vengeance of his nation, Moshi's soul was tearing itself asunder. He couldn't find a word to say. In the end, he helped Gumong to a stone bench in silence. Gumong looked at the gravestones covering the slope below. "How nice," he mumbled. "I've knelt before all of them." The cool breeze blew softly over the mountaintop. "I can start over again." Each word Gumong said was a knife digging into Moshi's heart. Lowering his head, Moshi took out a bamboo box, which he placed on the bench. This box was from the dining hall in the Bureau of Military Affairs and had imbued with spiritual energy to preserve the temperature and flavor of its contents for hours on end. Moshi unpacked it without looking at Gumong. "Eat something," he murmured. Within was straw mushroom and pork congee, rice cakes, meltingly tender braised dongpo pork belly dripping with savory juices, thinly sliced cucumber with sweet tianmian bean sauce, and some fluffy white steamed buns. Moshi held out a pair of chopsticks for Gumong, but Gumong didn't take them. He looked at his dusty hands in distress and made a great effort to wipe them on his clothes. No matter how hard he wiped, they were still filthy. Helpless, Gumong sat and stared vacantly into the distance. Moshi sighed and produced a spotless silk handkerchief. He wet it with a water channeling talisman and turned to Gumong. "Give me your hands. They're dirty." Instead of repeating himself, Moshi tugged Gumong's hands toward himself. When they touched, he could feel Gumong's fingers trembling in his own. Moshi looked down. Slowly and carefully, he wiped Gumong's hands with his damp handkerchief. When he finished, those hands were clean, and his once spotless handkerchief was thoroughly dirtied. "Go ahead," Moshi said. Gumong looked at the food, genuinely ravenous. He gulped. "Can I eat the steamed bun and meat without using chopsticks?" He raised his newly pristine hands to show Moshi. "Look, they're clean." Moshi swept a silent glance over him. Those thin scars on Gumong's hands were only more painful to see on his spotless skin. He looked away. "Just for today." Gumong nodded at once and took a hungry bite of the steamed bun. Moshi, who had also toiled all night without stopping for a meal, looked at Gumong and tried to affect a careless tone. "No one's going to take it from you." In response, Gumong dug in with even more haste, unintelligible sounds issuing from his steamed bun-stuffed mouth. After a beat, Moshi's voice softened even further. "Slow down a little," he said gently. This was met with more incomprehensible noises, muffled by steamed bun and braised meat. It had been a long time since the two of them had sat together so amicably. For a moment, Moshi had a powerful urge to pat Gumong on the head, just as he had in the past. But in the end, he raised a hand, only to let it fall back to his side. The movement was subtle, but Gumong noticed. However, he mistook Moshi's intentions. After a moment's pause, with his mouth still full of steamed bun, he falteringly tore the remaining bun in two. Tendrils of steam rose into the air. Gumong kept the smaller piece for himself and passed the larger one to Moshi. Above his bulging cheeks, his blue eyes were so clear they seemed to have been rinsed by the rain. Are you hungry too? Okay, well that's the end of the chapter. um, I'm gonna take like a little bit under a 10-minute break, and when I come back, we're at chapter 70, which is called Guilt is Heavy Work. Now, I forgot to bring up my little we'll be right back screen, so give me like a minute because I want to do that again. Okay. All right, I will see y'all soon. Oh, I'm sorry. I can look at the colored illustration. I wait. Um Okay, we're gonna look at the colored illustration. I didn't think it would come that quickly, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do that now. Oh, great! Oh, lovely! Huh. Yeah. Okay. That's sorry. I didn't mean to jump scare anyone. I just suddenly saw the messages and I was like, oh. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. Now that's done. All right. BRB. Hello, I'm back. I am sorry for jump scaring everyone earlier. Before we get back into it, I realized that I didn't show off my mug, which I need to do right now. Does anyone want to give him a name? Because, like, he doesn't have a name, but I feel like he should. Just like a huge mug. Mr. Butterworth is good. Okay. Alright. We are getting back into it. I'm not sure. My mind immediately went Bing Bing. I like Bing Bing too. Both like bee names. But it could be both. He can be named both. Okay. We're on page 47 for chapter 70. Guilt is heavy work. Concerned about this chapter title once again. Bing Bing Butterworth. That's it. That's it exactly. That's perfect. Moshi blinked. I don't need anything, he said slowly. If you don't like steamed buns, there's meat too. Gumong replied. I'll split that with you too. Moshi turned his face to hide his stinging eyes. I just ate. All of this is for you. Only then did Gumong resume his chewing, appeased. After he finished, the two descended the mountain together. The path was steep and long. Gumong didn't like to rely on others, so he stumbled and limped in front, while Moshi followed, wordlessly watching his figure from behind. This view was so familiar. Many years ago, there had been a young general who doggedly led his brother over hill and dale, blazing a trail through the thorny wilderness. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, and he had no time to fuss over his appearance, so he was often grimy and sometimes hunched and ragged. He was like a mayfly trying to topple a tree, whom anyone could crush with their pinky. But this mayfly would always struggle back up after being struck, tenacious and indefatigable. He would never be defeated. He had once been the army's invincible god of war. He had given countless people faith that they would be victorious and hope that they would return safely home. Moshi had thought that it was for this reason that he yearned to see Gumong repent and apologize for his wrongdoings. But when he saw Gumong kneeling before each grave in that forest of tombs, kowtowing to the heavens for his crimes, Moshi's pain only deepened. The sight of Gumong with his spine bent, his spirit broken, this wasn't pleasing at all. Very few enjoyed seeing the strong made fragile, let alone a person who had been your guiding light. As Moshi's thoughts wandered, Gumong stopped and turned to look at him. What is it? Moshi asked. Gumong pointed at the three-way fork in the road. I don't remember which way to go. Is it left? Moshi glanced to the left where the trees had fallen and left a patch of bare ground. The path was blocked off with military-issue chains, and two elite guards from the Imperial Palace kept watch. A barrier shone behind them, obscuring everything beyond from view. That's the forbidden area of Warrior Soul Mountain. No one is allowed in, said Moshi. Go to the right. Gumong looked thoughtfully toward that mysterious restricted area, his eyes slowly growing unfocused. An expression of sorrow washed over his face, as though he had remembered something. It was precisely sunset. Before Gumong could answer, the bleak peal of bells rose from behind the distant city walls, echoing between the heavens and the earth. The wind picked up in the mountain forest, gusting from the depths of the forbidden area and over the meandering mountain path. Leaves rustled on the trees, and birds flitted to and fro. In the cool breeze, Gumong slowly closed his eyes. "I don't know," he said, "but I think I've dreamed of this place before." This strange, offhand comment could not be true. When the Emperor sealed this area, Gumong had already defected. He couldn't possibly have been there before. You think they're like running experiments over there? It's something to do with, how his souls were broken and everything? "No one can go in there," Moshi said. "There are guards keeping watch at all hours. How could you have come here?" Gumong's lips parted, but he didn't know what to say. He could only hum in agreement and walk away, even as he cast longing looks over his shoulder. Many days of kneeling had left Gumong exhausted and half-starved. When they returned to the manor, Gumong ate and bathed, then burrowed into his den to drop off to sleep. He made no more mention of the restricted area. Gumong slept soundly all night and well into the next day. When he woke at last, he saw Moshi standing in Osmanthus Hall in black and gold robes, his hands behind his back. Upon hearing movement behind him, Moshi turned around and tossed Gumong a scroll. "Catch." "What's this?" "Introduction to Magic and History of Chonghua combined," replied Moshi. "Yesterday I spoke to His Imperial Majesty about your desire to turn over a new leaf. He told me to give you these books." Gumong had been noisily flipping through the scroll. At this, he looked up, eyes shining. "He's agreed to let me start over?" Moshi shot him a strange look before responding. "Let me remind you, I've warned you already that there's no chance His Imperial Majesty will retract your execution order, regardless of what you do to make amends. You cannot change the final outcome, no matter what." The flowers in the courtyard cast gentle shadows within the hall, but these words were cruel. Moshi said, "You will still be used for black magic experiments, and once you lose your value, you will die." He paused. "Do you understand?" "I do." Moshi closed his eyes. "Think it over carefully and make up your mind before you answer." "I've knelt for 4 days. My mind is made up." Gumong's bearing was serene, so much so that it reminded Moshi of the man from days past, the one who could hold the sky aloft on his shoulders if ever it should fall. "I know His Imperial Majesty only wants me to learn what's in these books so he can continue to use me. Instead of getting a free lunch, it's better if I work for my food. I understand." "Not only that," Moshi said. "The reason he wants me to teach you these subjects is because he holds out hope that you will remember something useful." "What's wrong with that?" Gumong asked. "I too want to know what happened to me in the past. I want to know whether what you all say is true." Moshi's hands clenched into fists, nails sinking deep into the flesh of his palm. "I've explained everything. If you choose this path, don't blame Chonghua for its ruthlessness on the day of your execution. You'd better not be bitter about it." "Of course I'll be bitter, but you'll die someday, and so will I." Gumong caressed the bamboo skull as if laying a hand on his own future. His thought process was almost bestial in its simplicity. "But if I can do better for some little while before then, I might as well." He looked up, limpid eyes staring squarely at Moshi. "Otherwise, why shouldn't I just die tomorrow? It would be better than spending my days in pain." Moshi found himself at a loss for words. It seemed he always arrived here, whether he was talking to the shameless General Gu or this thoughtless Gumong. He silently stared at Gumong for a while. "From now on, come to my study every day after sunset, at the hour of Shu. I will do my best to teach you." Hugging the scrolls to his chest, Gumong nodded. Thus, Moshi began to teach Gumong a few beginner's spells that didn't require much spiritual energy, as well as pieces of Chonghua's history. Gumong had used to know all these things. According to Jiang Fuli, learning them a second time might help Gumong recall the memories he was missing. And indeed, it turned out to be quite an effective method. Day after day passed like this, and the end of spring arrived before they knew it. Gumong recalled memory after memory from the past, but perhaps Jiang Fuli's calming medicine was too potent. All he regained were light and unimportant fragments. Most were related to his studies at the Cultivation Academy. These memories weren't very useful. Perhaps their greatest utility was in letting Gumong recover a shadow of his old self, such that he was no longer quite so brainless. Sometimes he swaggered about like General Gu, but other times he crouched silently in a corner like a wolf. At some times his speech was clever and sparkling with wit, but at others he stumbled over every word, halting and incoherent. Much to Moshi's vexation, as fragments of Gumong's memories returned, he began to inadvertently repeat things he used to say. For example, he would often speak with an absurdly arrogant cant and nearly get his legs broken by Li Wei. Or he'd call Moshi Moshidi and nearly get his legs broken by Moshi. Gumong had yet to find a balance between his instincts and the rules, and often found himself in situations where he'd have to swallow the latter half of a sentence after starting it. Once, for example, he thought to help Li Wei sweep the courtyard. With a sudden flash of inspiration, he waved his hands and pushed up his sleeves as he strode up to Li Wei and called out, "Come here, let me..." Before he could finish his statement, he met Housekeeper Li's quizzical look and was quickly startled out of General Gu's shadow. He shook his head and carefully stuttered, "Sweeping, help you." As time went on, Gumong found he hardly knew how to speak anymore. He often stood in the courtyard with his mouth open, staring vacantly into space. When others called for him unexpectedly, the expression on his face seemed caught between Gumong and General Gu, flickering back and forth. He had no idea how he was supposed to act, or what to say to avoid annoying those around him. So when confronted by others, he was wont to simply purse his lips, reduced to long spells of plaintive silence. Housekeeper Li was compelled to pronounce candidly, "If you ignore the fact he's a felon, that look of his is pretty cute and pitiful." Moshi's sole response was a cold snort. Nevertheless, whenever he wasn't at court and didn't have other matters on his plate, Moshi stayed in the manor and taught Gumong to read. As in his youth, Gumong liked to scribble in cursive but disliked writing in formal script. He liked Introduction to Magic, but disliked History of Chonghua. On one particular day, however, Moshi returned to the manor to find Gumong sitting by the Taihu stones near the pond's rippling waters. He was eating an apple and engrossed in reading History of Chonghua. The sight was so unexpected that Moshi couldn't help but walk up behind Gumong and lean in to see what he was poring over. "What is it? Is this part particularly interesting?" His voice was low, slow, and deeply charismatic, and his lips were a hair's breadth from Gumong's ear. The heat of his breath made Gumong jump and whip around to stare, a piece of apple still held between glossy lips. The two were so close, Gumong's lips nearly brushed Moshi's cheek. Although Gumong hardly noticed, Moshi's ears instinctively reddened, and he abruptly straightened up. At length, he said stiffly, "Don't turn around so quickly in the future." Gumong swallowed his bite of apple with an audible gulp and licked his lips. "You're the one who snuck up behind me and spoke in my ear. How is it my fault?" Moshi had no retort. The wolf-like and witless Gumong from several months ago would have never said anything of the kind, but his expression right now held some of the former Gu Shixiong's unreasonable manner. Still, Moshi knew that he was the one being unreasonable in this situation. Any more backtalk, and you'll be coming to the study tonight to copy Legends of Divine Catastrophe. Gumong opened his mouth. The haughty spirit of the war god Gumong itched to make a snappy comeback, but in the end, the shell of the traitor Gumong deflated. Pliant obedience once more filled those blue eyes. Moshi couldn't tell which state displeased him more, and he had no desire to continue this frustrating comparison. He lifted his chin and prodded the bamboo scroll in Gumong's hand. Why are you still on this part? Oh. Virtue, Mind, and Wisdom were the titles of the 3 gentlemen of Changhua. This particular chapter told of the best of them, Wisdom. In the past century, the titles of Virtue and Mind had been passed down to younger generations. Wisdom alone had found no worthy successor. Gumong pointed at the small painting of the wise gentleman. This person looks familiar. Ooh. That's the end of the chapter. We're at chapter 71, which is called Chen Tong and Hua Po An. It's giving Shizun turnover. Exactly. Moshi was silent for a moment. He crossed his arms and stretched his long legs to lean against the pillar behind Gumong. You think the wise gentleman looks familiar? I think I've seen him before, but I forget who he was. Moshi arched one sharp brow. The wise gentleman died hundreds of years ago. Perhaps you've gotten him mixed up with someone else. Gumong didn't appear to accept the explanation. He stared at the painting for several more seconds, and then proclaimed resolutely, I've definitely seen someone who looks like him. Do you think he could have ascended and become immortal so he wouldn't have died? That's impossible. Why? The wise gentleman died of a shattered core in the battle that consecrated his name in history. Changhua has never again named anyone Wisdom in honor of his memory. Having personally experienced the pain of a shattered core, Gumong flinched involuntarily. Why was his core destroyed? Did he do something wrong? The wise gentleman was always pure and beyond reproach. But if you were to say he did something wrong, it was probably in making an exception to shelter an academy disciple. Moshi paused. He trusted the wrong person. The painted subject gazed out from the silk scroll, his expression serene. His eyes seemed to contain compassion as well as gentleness. Trusted the wrong person, Gumong murmured. He hesitated, but it's not written in the book. History of Changhua is an abridged history. It doesn't contain the biographies of every notable person. It only lists the spells they created and their achievements. Of course you won't find every detail here. Will you tell me about it, then? Gumong turned around and propped his long legs on the bench, gazing at Moshi in anticipation. Moshi paused. Sit properly, not like a ruffian. Gumong reluctantly set his feet back on the ground. Happily, Moshi had nothing else to attend to. After a moment spent recalling this particular history, he began to tell Gumong of the past. The wise gentleman was named Chen Tong. He was once the headmaster of the Cultivation Academy, as well as state preceptor. Under his leadership, the academy produced countless talented commanders and grandmasters, and devised many new spells and techniques. There was a saying back then that, with Preceptor Chen Tong's guidance, even the least talented disciple could transform themselves and achieve success. Thus people named him the wise gentleman with the golden touch. Then wouldn't everyone be begging him to teach them? Gumong asked. There is art. Even take another shot, even if this time it's Gumong who has the long legs. I know, I was not expecting to hear that one. This is cute. We're just asking questions. Getting Moshi to teach him things. There was no need to beg. Chen Tong taught everyone, regardless of background. As the headmaster of the academy, he paid personal attention to every single disciple. Moshi paused, even the academy's slaves. Back then, there was a young slave at the Cultivation Academy who refused to resign himself to a lifetime of inferiority. He wished to wield the same power as cultivators, so each time Chen Tong gave a lecture, he would pretend to be cleaning the seats very slowly in order to eavesdrop next to the platform. Ah, how daring. Wouldn't he get shooed away? Other elders might have done so, but Chen Tong didn't, said Moshi. That slave knew the headmaster's benevolence and picked his lectures for that very reason. What's more, he was very intelligent. He memorized nearly everything Preceptor Chen Tong imparted to his disciples. Gumong raised his hand. I got it. And then this little slave secretly cultivated and became terrifically powerful, and then fought Princess Haitong. Moshi blinked, his habitually grave expression giving way to rare confusion. Who? That amazing princess, like Mengzi, Princess Haitong. It's Preceptor Chen Tong, not Haitong. Preceptor is in headmaster of the academy. It's a different thing from Princess Mengzi. Fine, Gumong answered, but it sounds the same to me. Princess Chen Tong, then. Moshi pursed his lips slightly. Gu Shixiang had always liked to tease Moshi by calling him princess. It turned out this rascal's habit of calling men princess hadn't changed even now. Moshi kneaded his temple with slender fingers, as if afflicted with a sudden headache. He didn't want to discuss semantics of preceptor or princess, so after taking a few breaths, he continued. You guessed the first part right. That slave indeed cultivated in secret, but things weren't so neat. Developing a spiritual core is a dangerous process. The stronger a cultivator's innate ability, the more torment they must endure. That slave had no idea he possessed astonishing potential, to the extent that he lost control and went berserk as soon as he started developing his core. The academy dorms burst into flames, and the secret of his cultivation was exposed. He was brought before Preceptor Chen Tong. Gumong was entranced. As soon as Moshi stopped to take a breath, he blurted out, Then what happened? Did Princess Chen Tong break the slave's spiritual core? No, the slave's core hadn't yet fully formed. It was still in the process of coalescing, and he was in a great deal of pain. Chen Tong knew that if no one reached out to guide him, he would combust and die. So, because of his great compassion, he defied the law that forbade slaves from cultivating and helped the young man through his trial. The plants in the courtyard swayed. Moshi gazed at the glimmering ripples on the water and continued. After Chen Tong helped him, the slave knelt and thanked him profusely. He would do anything to repay this gift of life. Seeing that the slave had a strong spiritual foundation, Chen Tong's heart softened. He reported the incident to the emperor and took the young man in as an academy disciple. Gumong sighed. That slave was so lucky. In any case, what was his name? He had no parents to give him one. The academy overseers usually called him 13, his slave registry number. But after Chen Tong took him in, he gave him a new name. Moshi hesitated for a moment. Hua Po-an. Chen Tong, Hua Po-an. As if spooked by the sound, several birds in the surrounding trees startled into flight, clearing the high walls and soaring into the sky. Moshi shot a glance at Gumong. Here was an interesting situation. Hua Po'an's infamy was such that his name was almost an unspeakable taboo, and uttering it akin to a curse. Even now, many in Changhua wouldn't dare mention him in casual conversation. But Gumong didn't react at all to this monster's name, as if it was that of any ordinary person. He merely asked, "Was Hua Po'an the person Princess Chen Tong shouldn't have trusted?" "Correct." Chen Tong's faith in him was misplaced. He had no idea what kind of evil he'd taken in, and was completely oblivious to the fact that he had personally bestowed a name on the monster who would bring disaster to the 9 provinces for nearly a century. He thought things would carry on as usual, and that he'd only performed a truly insignificant action. Moshi lowered his head and gazed at the painting of Chen Tong, saturated with sunlight. The brushstrokes lent him a gentle and warm appearance, as if the subject were gazing through time to meet the viewer's eye. Years went by. Chen Tong's care wasn't wasted on Hua Po'an. He grew stronger and more powerful. He accomplished many remarkable feats for Changhua, and received the emperor's regard and commendation. The emperor even tried to end the ban on slaves cultivating in hopes of finding more incredible talents like him. Gumong was amazed. So Changhua had thought of putting slaves to use en masse, even back then. He couldn't help but ask, did he succeed? No. Abolishing the prohibition was no trivial matter. The emperor first specially allowed Hua Po'an to select some clever slaves from among the people and instruct them in cultivation. Gumong seemed somewhat disappointed, but he said, "That's all right, too. At least they had an opportunity to prove themselves." Prove themselves? Moshi scoffed as though he'd heard a great joke. Yes, they proved themselves, but what they proved wasn't impressive spiritual power, but rather ravenous ambition. As he spoke, he met Gumong's blue eyes, clear as river water. "Gumong, do you know why Chonghua's nobles are so skittish about allowing slaves to cultivate?" Gumong shook his head. "Because of Hua Po'an. The emperor gave him the power to raise an army, but in the end he turned this knife against the heart of Changhua." Moshi's face was grim. The cultivators Hua Po'an taught didn't seek to repay the country's kindness. Rather, they wanted to overturn established order and throw Changhua into chaos. Hua Po'an defected. Gumong fell silent as a realization slowly dawned. Then, the army I had was very similar to Hua Po'an's, wasn't it? Yes. Moshi also paused for a beat before slowly continuing. Many people saw Hua Po'an in you. Back when Hua Po'an made his move, Preceptor Chen Tong was there to stop him. But if you were to repeat his crime, a similar disaster would undoubtedly befall Changhua. And if it did, no one knew who could stop it. Gumong paled slightly, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the scroll. "Are we alike?" he asked quietly, "Hua Po'an and I?" Noting Gumong's unease, Moshi softened his tone. "You aren't the same. It's true that you also committed treason, but Hua Po'an was a madman beyond imagination. In order to strengthen his slave cultivators as quickly as possible, he kidnapped many butterfly-boned beauty feasts for military use." What are butterfly-boned beauty feasts? "They are people with a special constitution." Moshi's tone held disgust. He was unwilling to say much on the subject. "They can be used as dual cultivation vessels, or eaten directly," he simply said. "Even the most ordinary cultivator can improve their cultivation instantaneously by consuming the flesh of such people. Hua Po'an used this cruel method of cannibalism to pull up a group of slaves sworn to him with their lives. He left to establish his own country on Chonghua's northern frontier and proclaimed himself king." As he spoke, Moshi closed the scroll of history of Changhua on Gumong's knees. Now that I've said all this, he said, lowering his head, let me ask you. Do you know which country Hua Poan was the founding monarch of? Gumong looked at him blankly. Look, Liao? He stuttered. Correct. Moshi's expression became graver. The Liao kingdom's founding monarch, Hua Poan. He was the ruinous consequence of the first time Changhua trusted a slave. Maybe you shouldn't have had slaves in the first place, but, Moshi had only meant to tell Gumong something of the Liao kingdom and Chonghua's history. He hadn't meant to insinuate anything about Gumong. Nevertheless, his words were taken with intent. Gumong was overcome with embarrassment and shame. He felt as though a hand had tightened around his throat, rendering him momentarily unable to speak. As he had regained some sense of his past self in recent days, he'd felt ever more strongly that his actions from before he lost his memories had been incomprehensible. Even if Changhua had its flaws, at least it was a nation that had once tried to change for the better, only to end up as the victim of other schemes. Changhua had believed in Hua Poan, but Hua Poan turned and dealt a blow to the nobles led by Chen Tong. If Gumong were in their shoes, could he ever unreservedly trust a slave-born person again? Who knew if that person might become the next Hua Poan, or whether they would found the next black magic Liao kingdom? I wouldn't be surprised if this history, turns out to be falsified or something. Yet, under these conditions, Changhua had still given its slaves a second chance. Whether to achieve a balance of power, or to exploit them, or for other reasons, Changhua once again gave power to a slave, to Gumong and his army. How much determination and courage must it have taken the former emperor to make such a decision? But in the end, Gumong had become an exemplary Hua Poan. He might not have led his army in an uprising, but he still defected and fled to the very Liao kingdom that Hua Poan founded. He'd walked a path far too similar to that of his predecessor. After a long, conflicted silence, Gumong slowly set down the bamboo scroll. I'm sorry, the most worthless phrase in the world. One Gumong had already repeated thousands of times in front of those heroes' gravestones. It took Moshi a moment to understand what Gumong meant. He didn't know how to respond. He heard Gumong speak up again. What about Princess Chen Tong? In the end, how was his core destroyed? Okay, that's the end of the chapter. And it's about to be 5 o'clock. So I guess we're going to stop there. And when we come back on Wednesday, we're going to be on page 65 for chapter 72, which is called Yesteryear Defeat. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about some things that we have learned today. But I don't know. Yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of wondering about, why does Gumong think that he recognizes Chen Tong? And there was a line about Chen Tong's portrait staring through time. And, things about time. Henry, we've gone through so many chapters already. These feel shorter than Arha's. They might be shorter than Arha's. I'm not sure. I would have to compare. But they do kind of feel shorter. Oh, and this book, yeah, the books... I don't know if it levels off at this point, but it's like the books get shorter as you go along in the series. I'm looking. I have 4, and I have 7 after this. I just haven't gotten 5 and 6 yet, but honestly, I don't know, 7 looks even shorter, too, so, yeah. But yeah, I think we can do this one in 6 sessions. I don't I don't know why Seven Seas, like, front loads their series like this. Oh. Oh, yeah, the shirt. Yeah. It's the shirt. I think Brittany has the shirt, too. Or the jacket, maybe? Um, thank you. Yeah, I don't know why every, like, Seven Seas series is, like, the first book is longer than all of the following ones. Like, I don't know why they seem to find that necessary. It would be cool if it was a little more balanced, but that's fine. So yeah, probably from now on we'll be able to do these in like 6 sessions a piece, I think. Um so yeah, I I was oh, Henry, it's an Etsy store. I can put the link in the Discord. I forget, there's like two different stores and I forget which one. Um yeah, Arha was especially bad with like the first book being super big. Um Blue. Yeah, they might be trying to get new readers like more interested when they read the first book. That would make sense. Yeah, I'm gonna share it in Discord. I can definitely find it. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Um, I feel like I was going to say something else, but now I can't remember. Um, so in that case, I guess. Oh, that's right. The first volumes were published years ago, so they were still figuring it out. That makes sense. They kind of changed their methods of where they want to split volumes, I guess. Um, I had been talking about this in Discord, but I already like forgot the conclusion I came to, which is I'm not sure if I should finish this series entirely and then move on to like another book series, or come to a stopping point in the middle and do like a short series and then come back to Yuwu, or maybe like alternate back and forth between two series. Um, if I do that, I have no idea at this point if it makes sense to stop after volume 3 or like wait until volume 4. Um, but yeah, I know that I said the next thing I would read. Okay. Rather we just keep going with Yuwu than do Ballad. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. If there's so many little details that will be easy to forget, then I might as well just like finish the series in one go. Yeah. Okay, awesome. And okay. Okay, Blue, you agree too. Okay, then that's what I'm gonna do. I guess I'm gonna do all of Yuwu, and then the next series after that will be Ballad of Sword and Wine. And wait. How many books is that one gonna have? Somebody told me and I forgot. Um Because maybe Ballad of Sword and Wine is the one that I was thinking of, like, stopping and alternating in the middle. 8. Okay, that was the one I was thinking of, like, splitting up, because that probably would make more sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, especially because, what, book 4 just came out? We're still waiting for, like, 4 volumes of that. So yeah, that would make sense. Okay. And case file has 10. That's crazy to me. Almost as much as Arha. Okay. Yeah. So no, I'm gonna finish Remnants of Filth first, for sure, then. Um I don't want to get too confused. I'm trying to like go back and take notes sometimes after a stream. So yeah, don't want to do that. Won't mix these up. Okay. Good to know. I'll find the store where I got the shirt from. I'll put that link in the Discord, and I'm gonna see y'all on Wednesday for the next chapters. Um, Thank you for coming to the stream, and have a good one. Bye.